Now, it would be really simple to file these bushfire mosaics in this group away as yet another manifestation of the Aussie battler myth. But I don't think it's as simple as that. I think these mosaics speak of more than that. Because insurance money would surely have replaced the function of these items, and maybe even some of their antique value. But no amount of money can salve the wound when precious memory-bearing things like these are destroyed, so utterly, shattered, melted, scattered, charred. The shards of their possessions would certainly have ended up in a forgotten landfill somewhere, too far and too obscure even for people to go and mourn over them, as utterly lost as it's possible to be. These mosaics, I think, echo our fondest hope that nothing is ever really lost, only transformed, that what happens even to the bits that were us after we are burnt and purged away from this earth are not gone, but stay, just reassembled as earth and plant and air and other people. The creativity is about more than simply recycling material like some cocky farmer ever finding new uses for discarded bits and pieces. The wealth of the human spirit that made new beauty from past destruction puts to shame our very notion of dollar value and reminds us that that which matters most to us cannot be bought, cannot be sold, cannot be traded. And the value of the mosaics to them that made them, and we who can look on them, is literally beyond price. What auctioneer, what gallery owner so mercenary would dare to value a mosaic made in life-affirming, death-denying gesture made from the blasted bits of all one had, all one carried with them from their own past and that of their forebears? The unquenchable love of life, in short, burns in these mosaics. And whether or not one likes them as objects of art isn't even the point, and seems almost crass, which is why I haven't brought any pictures today, because whether we like them or not isn't the point. We have in our culture a kind of half-baked, untried notion that all art is the product of neurosis. That artists, are fundamentally damaged people, and that works of art are produced in response to or as some compensation for some inner defect or affliction. The grit in the oyster that makes the pearl kind of thing. Beethoven's deafness is often cited as proof of this. These mosaics, on the other hand, suggest to me at least, in the words of Rollo May, that creativity is a product not of sickness, but, quote, represents the highest degree of emotional health and the expression of normal people in the act of actualizing themselves. Like the phoenix of legend purified by the ashes of the fire, these humble works of homemade art rise defiantly, transmuting bits of broken crockery into talisman. And like all talisman, they store not only memory, but they also confer power to the possessor. They challenge nature's ironclad law of entropy, that force that makes all organized matter want to break down, crumble, come apart, render itself into the dust from whence it came. The power to reconstruct a higher, truer, more refined meaning from the shards of the past. These mosaics shout out the sheer indomitability of the human spirit, its stamina, its health. To a grindingly indifferent universe, it shouts out this: you can vaporize us with fireballs. You can drown us in tsunamis. You can bury us in mudslides. You can choke us on volcanic ash. You can do these and all things more to remind us that we are less than a speck of dust in the immensity of creation. Or you can toy with us. You can allow us to age slowly, watching our friends and loved ones depart, witnessing the bright promise of our youth wither into age, as our hair thins, as our teeth fall out, as our organs fail, as our limbs stoop and grow brittle, and keep us alive long enough that we can be aware of the last bits of our own faculties fizzling into dementia, all the while coyly refusing to reveal to us any certain meaning at all to why we live, why we suffer. You can do this, you can do all this, but you cannot vanquish the human spirit. Those of us that survive will gather and shore up the fragments of the past against the ruins and build anew, and build better and higher forms, and more beautifully, in sheer defiance of apparent oblivion. Friends, we may ultimately be doomed, but you've got to love the human race. Out of the hell of the fire, such hope, such health, such wholeness. You will recall from their testimonies that the process of transforming the shards into mosaics, something else transformed. Community was reformed, and it's not a stretch to imagine that each of the women involved experienced something like a transformation as well. Little of what we build lasts, but it's the building that goes on and causes us to ever evolve. And creativity, in this case, to me embodies something of the evolving nature of our human consciousness as well. I don't say this lightly because, fortunately, this line of thinking about creativity and human evolution has many wise advocates, including the Jesuit philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. Teilhard studied what he calls the rise of spirit, or the evolution of consciousness in the universe. He believed it to be observable and verifiable in a simple law he called the law of complexity. This law simply states that there is an inherent compulsion in matter to arrange itself in more complex groupings, exhibiting higher levels of consciousness. The more complex the matter, the more conscious it is. Teilhard proposed that this is a better way to describe evolution of life rather than survival of the fittest. The universe, he argued, strives toward higher consciousness and does so by arranging itself into more and more complex structures. Teilhard was convinced that human spiritual development is moved by that same universal law as material development. He wrote, quote, "Everything is the sum of the past, and nothing is comprehensible except through its history. Nature is just another word for becoming, for self-creation. Everything, including the human soul, the highest spiritual manifestation we know of, comes within this universal law.